Hi, this coffee shop's a little full. Do you mind if I sit at this table with you?
Sure, yeah, you can join.
Thanks. Um, can I ask, what are those pants that you're wearing?
Oh, they're my waiters. I'm sorry about the puddle. I came straight from the field. What's your name?
I'm Lakia. Nice to meet you.
My
And
name-
yours?
My name's Dustin.
So you came from the field. What are you doing out there?
Well, I actually study king rails, a secretive marsh bird that is a pretty cool bird. I enjoy spending time out in the field with them.
So these king rails live in marshes? Can you tell me what a marsh bird is?
Yeah, it's as simple as the name, actually. They're a bird that lives in the marsh, and a king rail in particular is pretty cool in that they are bigger than the other secretive marsh birds, and they are pretty rare too. So to be a marsh bird, you just have to depend upon the habitat that is found in a marsh.
What is a marsh?
Well, a marsh is a place where marsh plants grow, so like cattails and phragmites, reed canary grass, river bulrush. These are all plants that specialize in wet areas, and they grew up in a way that, in some cases at least, king rails and other marsh birds can use in order to survive.
Oh, that's interesting. So why are you studying king rails in particular?
Well, king rails are a declining species, or at least they have significantly declined, especially here in the Midwest, within the last 50 or so years. So because of that, they've been identified as a focal species by conservation organizations like the Great Lakes and Upper Mississippi Joint Venture, which want to help them out. So I was actually chosen to figure out what they need as far as habitat by that joint venture, so that they can then use what I find to help conserve the species. So I'm excited and honored to be a part of this project.
That's neat. So how is your study helping them particularly?
Well, I'm looking at microhabitat, which is to say within the territory of these birds. So I'm going to their territories, and I am describing the habitat that they're both using and the habitat that they're not using, so we can figure out what it is that they need in order to survive and be a successful species, to keep on keeping on.
So what do you mean by using? Like what they sleep in, or?
Well, yeah, what they sleep in, what they eat, and what cover they use during the day when they might not be asleep. So I actually put radio transmitters on these birds. Have you ever heard of them?
I haven't.
Well, a radio transmitter is a device that I can strap on to a king rail's back, kind of like a backpack. So like the one that you're wearing now. I like that pink design and the butterfly wings on your backpack. But anyways, it is on the bird securely. It's not going to fall off. It's not going to harm the bird.
Oh, that's good.
And I can just go out there with my antenna and my receiving unit, and based on signal strength, I can figure out where that bird is. And but first, we have to catch them. Do you have any experience catching animals?
I don't. I have a dog sometimes that gets loose, but I'm assuming it's different for a marsh bird.
Yep. For king rails in particular, we had to broadcast their own call types, the call types of their species, from a trap. And they would walk into this trap thinking that there was an intruder in their territory, kind of like if you heard somebody talking in your house in the middle of the night, you might go see who it was. So that's what these birds are doing, and they end up getting in the trap and they can't get out, put on the transmitter, and there you go. We can study their habitat.
Nice. So specifically, how do you figure out what they prefer?
Well, once I track them down, or when one of my helpers tracks them down, we will conduct vegetation surveys. So we'll figure out what plants they need, what water depths they're using, as well as a few other characteristics, and we will record that both at the location where we find them, where we've tracked them to, and at random locations, a fixed distance from the homing location. So at these random locations, we're assuming that they represent within territory habitat, but also habitat that the bird isn't actually using. So at the micro scale, we're trying to figure out what it is that they are using. And this setup will allow us to get at that.
That's really interesting. So have you found anything yet?
Well, I'm still entering the data. As you can see, I come to this coffee shop every morning, and often straight from the Marsh, which the proprietor doesn't appreciate. But the point is, I am not sure yet what they prefer, since I'm still entering data, but just based on this preliminary look, it seems like they could actually prefer reed canary grass. There seems to be more of that at the homing locations than at the random locations. And that's kind of interesting, because reed canary grass is an exotic invasive species. Do you know what that means?
I don't. Exotic invasive?
It means they're from somewhere else. That's what the exotic means. And invasive means that they spread. So because they're from somewhere else and they don't have any natural enemies here or competitors, they're able to spread pretty rapidly. And it seems, though it may not be the case, it's very preliminary, that king rails might actually like to use reed canary grass. But that is not saying a whole lot, because a lot of their habitat is covered by other exotic invasive species. So it could just be what they dislike the least. Maybe they don't really like it, but it's just the best of what they have. Maybe other native species, which aren't here anymore, would have been better for them, but we won't know, because those species aren't so common anymore.
So you said you're still analyzing the results, but what do you think you might find?
Well, I think that we could find that water depth does influence where these birds are at. A lot of the wetlands that king rails depend upon are also managed for ducks. A lot of people hunt ducks. So land.
Oh, like Birds Unlimited?
Yeah, like Ducks Unlimited. The managers at these sites will try to make conditions good for duck hunters and so for ducks. And that might not be the best for birds like king rails. We don't exactly know, but when water levels are drawn down for the sake of the ducks, that could be too low for the king rails. And water levels are a habitat characteristic that I'm really interested in. Maybe we'll find that certain depths at certain times of year are better for these birds, and then that could directly be used by land managers who are trying to hopefully provide some habitat for marsh birds as well as the waterfowl, like the ducks and the geese.
That's interesting. So why might this be important?
Well, to get at your question of why does it matter, who cares, I'll say that land managers, like I mentioned, maybe the waterfowl managers, they might actually like to know what king rails need. Maybe they'll have a section of their property where they are willing to manage for king rails, or maybe even people who are trying to decide what land to buy could like to know about what king rails need. So if the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service decides that they want to buy some land to benefit king rails, they could look at a study like mine to determine what is suitable habitat and what land could be acquired to help out the king rail.
Oh, that makes sense, because they're endangered. Well, maybe if you end up getting more results later, you can call me?
Oh yeah, thank you for your number. I appreciate that. I love to talk my science, and maybe next time we can talk a bit more about you. So thanks for joining me. I have to get back to the marsh. I hope the puddle didn't bother you too much, but it was a pleasure meeting you, Kia.
It was nice talking to you too, Dustin.